Why is housing in Bellevue so expensive? A lot of people blame Amazon and Microsoft or high-paying tech jobs. And there's some truth there, but that's not the whole story. So let's jump in and talk about 3 reasons houses in Bellevue are more expensive. The first one is scarcity, low supply. The second one is prestige premiums. What do we mean by that? We'll explain it. And 3 is the job economy, what we already mentioned, Amazon and Microsoft. But there's more detail to it, and really it's a part of the bigger environment. Okay, so first, what is this about scarcity? We can understand the basic principles of economics, supply and demand. When the supply of something, what's available, isn't enough to meet the demand, it's going to put pressure on prices. We can think about what situations we're familiar with. During the beginning of the pandemic, toilet paper, hard to get, almost willing to pay whatever it costs, right? Lumber became really expensive because that was hard to get. If you're like me and you can remember back to the mid-90s, this was like Tickle Me Elmo. People were going kind of crazy to get that toy because there was low supply. So what is that low supply in Bellevue? Houses and land. Really, this is true of Seattle and its suburbs, the Pacific Northwest. It's a geographic constraint. So we think of a city like Houston or Phoenix where there's flat and cheap available land. When there's a high demand, they can relieve the pressure of our demand by building more houses a lot easier than they can in the Bellevue area. So Bellevue has beautiful lakes on either side, the foothills and the mountains of the Cascades, things that we love, but that constrains supply. There's less land available. In fact, the land in Bellevue is fixed. Now, something that confounds that is that for a long time, Bellevue's, the style of building in Bellevue was low density housing. So think larger lots, sometimes larger homes on those larger lots. That's changing a little bit now. There's recognized the need for more density. There's townhomes, there's condos and apartments being built, but Bellevue is never going to be a high density city. So there's less houses available and there's less land available. So now when demand goes up, you can't get more of it, pressure shows up on price. It creates an interesting dynamic, by the way, something that we see in our market. We do see new construction, beautiful homes being built, but what happens is a builder will pay $1 million or $1.5 million for a house and then tear it down. And some places in the country that might just seem unthinkable. That cost for that just to buy a house, to tear it down, but then they build what the market's asking for on that land. So the value was in the land, not the structure that was there. Okay, so we understand this idea of scarcity. When there's not enough of something and there's a lot of demand for it, people will pay more. So let's think about number 2, and then also consider how these things add to each other. So number 2 was prestige premiums. What are we talking about? That's when someone is willing to pay more value beyond the utility of something. So a house is a house unless that house is in the boundary of the school that you have to get your kids into because it means a better college, a better career, a better life. That's a perception thing, a perceived value in that school, a prestige that someone will pay extra for. We can understand this concept very simply. I can buy a wristwatch for a few $100s that's very reliable, will last a long time. So why does someone pay thousands and thousands of dollars for a Rolex? Prestige bonus, the name, maybe it's higher quality, etc., but the name carries value, right? It's interesting, in Bellevue, this plays out more than some of the other suburbs in our area. Bellevue is just a beautiful setting. I've talked about in other video, it's called the City of Parks. It has wider streets. It's a beautiful place. So people will pay more just for that. But then you have some other things that are prestige items, like being on the waterfront, or being higher up on the hill to get a better view, or buying a house that is on a golf course, or that's, as we mentioned, in the school you want. So those things create that need to pay more for that value, that prestige, because there's less of it. So we have the scarcity we talked about, combined with the need for prestige, amplifies the price going up. What about the third thing? We mentioned the employment environment. So Amazon and Microsoft get a lot of the blame. They drive up prices, right? Well, to a certain degree they do, but it's really part of the bigger environment for Bellevue. before we talk about the employment situation, there's two really important real estate dynamics to understand. One is that jobs drive the real estate market. So no one, unless you live in like a niche market or a vacation market where people are buying to go there on vacation, but no one wants to live in a place where they can't take care of their family. We all need a way to work and provide. So that's jobs. Jobs bring people, and people then buy and sell houses. So jobs is kind of a foundational piece to thinking about the real estate market. And then part of that is not just the number of jobs, but the quality of the job. What kind of work is it? Does it pay a higher wage or a lower wage? So the environment in Bellevue is typically going to be companies like Microsoft, Amazon, these bigger tech companies that are bringing in a lot of jobs and they pay higher wages. Microsoft is the largest employer. Actually, number two might surprise you. The number two employer in Bellevue is T-Mobile. They're headquartered in Bellevue. Amazon has a lot of employees. They're bringing more employees from Seattle and from other places. So they've been filling out a lot more office space and bringing in jobs. And then we have a lot of mid to large tech companies, some headquartered, some just with a large presence. OpenAI, who makes ChatGPT, they just signed a big lease in Bellevue. LinkedIn, Valve, Expedia Group. There's lots of these companies, a lot of data companies. So those all have a certain kind of job with a certain kind of wage that drives that economy. We have a lot of non-tech companies as well, like PACCAR is headquartered here. Of course, we're famous in the Pacific Northwest for Boeing. Verizon has a large presence. Nordstrom, a company that started here as well. These all have large employment presence in Bellevue. So that creates a job center. And so one of the principles is that people don't want to live far from work, right? They don't want to commute a long way. And that's something they're willing to pay for, to live closer. So Bellevue has created itself as a core job center, and quite a few people do commute in, but the ones who can afford it are willing to pay to live close to work. So a lot of jobs and a lot of houses creates upward pressure on the housing prices. And then we have the dynamic of higher wages, so people can even afford more. So if there's competition, that brings the prices up as well. So you might find the similar size or year built of a home here versus an hour away in like Puyallup or Spanaway or something, and the price difference is enormous because people are willing to pay more to live in the job center. So now we can think about all three of those factors. It's like a volcano. They put pressure on the market, they put pressure on being able to buy homes, and the lava, the explosion, the release is in the price. So if you're selling a home and you've got 5 people competing, or recent years it was quite a few more than that, they're going to compete, they're going to try to give you the best terms, and eventually that's going to come out with price. That drives up the home prices. So naturally, you might be thinking, well, what is it going to take to afford a house in Bellevue? By the way, I forgot to introduce myself. I'm Daniel McDougall. I'm a realtor here in the East Side in Bellevue. I help people who are moving to Bellevue. And if you want to know about what is it going to take to afford a house in Bellevue, that video is here. And if you want to know what I love about Bellevue, that video is here. Take care.